The tuxedo fit perfectly. The Aston Martin flipped 7 times. And somewhere between the parkour chase and the poker table, James Bond became human again. But behind the reboot that saved the franchise, nothing came easy. The star was chosen after bombing his audition. The torture scene emptied theaters. And the opening chase was filmed while running from real police who thought they were vandals. These are 20 weird facts about Casino Royale, and buried in the brutal reinvention, a leading man who cried after seeing what he had created, shaken, not stirred. This gets intense. Number 20, Daniel Craig, was chosen after a terrible audition.
Action.
Michael and I really wanted him. We only wanted him.
When Daniel Craig walked into his Casino Royale screen test, he was nervous, unprepared, and visibly uncomfortable with the material. The audition was a disaster by conventional standards. He forgot lines repeatedly, stumbled through dialogue, and couldn't find the rhythm of Bond's characteristic cool detachment. His physical tension was obvious, making him seem wrong for a character defined by effortless confidence and smooth charm. Most casting directors would have thanked him politely and moved on to the next candidate. Director Martin Campbell watched the terrible audition and saw something completely different. Campbell wasn't looking for an actor who could imitate previous Bond performances or deliver smooth charm on command. He was searching for rawness, danger, a performer who could bring genuine edge to a character that had become too polished and safe. Craig's discomfort during the audition revealed vulnerability and intensity that none of the more polished candidates possessed. Where others had been smooth, Craig was rough. Where others had been confident, Craig was uncertain. And that uncertainty felt real, human, exactly what the franchise needed after decades of increasingly cartoonish performances. Campbell made an immediate decision based purely on instinct. He told producers that Craig was Bond despite the awful audition, despite Craig's own doubts about his suitability, despite fan outcry when the casting was announced. The choice was ridiculed initially, with fans and media questioning how a blonde, rough-looking actor could possibly play the sophisticated secret agent. Campbell never wavered, trusting what he had seen beneath the terrible audition performance. That instinct was vindicated completely. Craig's Bond became the most critically acclaimed and successful interpretation of the character, reinvigorating a dying franchise and creating a new template for action heroes. The worst audition led to the best casting decision in Bond history. Number 19. The opening chase was filmed without permits. The parkour chase that opens Casino Royale became one of the most celebrated action sequences in modern cinema, a breathtaking pursuit through a Madagascar construction site, featuring Sébastien Foucan's extraordinary free-running skills. The sequence looks meticulously planned and carefully controlled, suggesting months of preparation and coordination with local authorities. The reality was far more chaotic and dangerous. Significant portions of the chase were filmed guerrilla style without proper permits, with the crew running from actual police who believed they were witnessing criminal destruction of property. The production had some official permissions, but not enough to cover everything they wanted to film. Rather than limiting themselves to authorized locations, they made a risky decision to shoot first and deal with consequences later. Cameras captured Craig and Foucan running through construction sites, climbing cranes, and jumping between buildings while local authorities attempted to stop what appeared to be trespassing and vandalism. Real police arrived multiple times to investigate reports of men destroying property and engaging in dangerous stunts. The production would film quickly, capturing as much footage as possible before being forced to relocate. Sometimes they had minutes before authorities arrived. Other times, they were literally running from police while cameras continued rolling, creating authentic urgency that no amount of planning could replicate. The approach was dangerous and legally questionable, but it produced footage that felt viscerally real because the danger and chaos were partially genuine. Madagascar officials were reportedly furious when they discovered the extent of unauthorized filming. The production faced potential legal consequences and diplomatic complications. But the footage was spectacular, and ultimately the sequence became so celebrated that Madagascar benefited from tourism exposure despite the unauthorized methods used to create it. Number 18. Eva Green hated the casino. Dresses
For you.
Something you expect me to wear?
Costume designer Lindy Hemming created stunning gowns for Vesper Lynd's casino scenes, elegant creations that photographed beautifully and established the character's sophisticated style. The dresses became iconic, referenced in fashion magazines and imitated by designers worldwide. But for Eva Green, wearing them was torture. Hemming had designed the gowns to be extremely fitted, emphasizing Green's figure and creating a specific silhouette that worked perfectly on camera, but was agonizing to actually wear for the extended periods required during filming. The dresses were so tight that Green struggled to breathe properly while wearing them. Deep breaths were impossible. Sitting down required careful maneuvering to avoid ripping seams. Between takes, Green couldn't rest normally because the restrictive garments prevented comfortable movement. Eating was nearly impossible during shooting days when she was costumed, forcing her to work long hours without proper meals, because the corset-style construction didn't allow for any expansion around her midsection. Green complained repeatedly about the discomfort, but was told the dresses were essential to Vesper's visual presentation. Thus, camera loved how they looked, and that was considered more important than the actress's physical comfort. She endured the pain professionally, delivering her performance while fighting against garments that felt like beautiful torture devices. Years later, Green admitted the casino dresses were the most physically uncomfortable costumes she had ever worn in her career. The beauty captured on film came at a real cost. Another example of how movie magic often involves genuine suffering that audiences never see. Every elegant moment of Vesper at the poker table represented Green struggling to breathe while maintaining perfect composure. Number 17. Craig did his own stunts and lost 2 teeth.
There's no time to have a fear of heights. You've got to get up there and do it. I mean,
Daniel Craig insisted on performing as many of his own stunts as possible, believing that audiences could tell the difference between an actor actually doing dangerous work and obvious stunt doubles. He trained extensively to handle the film's physical demands, working with parkour experts and fight coordinators to execute complex action sequences himself. The approach added authenticity to Casino Royale's visceral action, making Bond feel genuinely present in dangerous situations rather than obviously protected by movie magic. But doing real stunts carries real risks. During the Madagascar parkour chase, Craig took an accidental blow to the face that knocked out 2 of his front teeth. The hit came during a fight sequence, an impact that landed harder than intended and sent teeth flying while cameras rolled. Craig felt the immediate shock and pain, tasted blood, and realized something had gone seriously wrong. Production stopped immediately as the severity of the injury became apparent. Craig was rushed to emergency dental work, requiring temporary repairs that would allow him to continue filming while permanent solutions were planned. The incident shut down production for several days, costing the studio money and forcing schedule adjustments. Insurance companies were furious about the risks Craig was taking, arguing that allowing the lead actor to perform dangerous stunts without adequate protection was financially irresponsible. But Craig insisted on continuing to do his own stunt work despite the injury. He believed the authenticity was worth the risk and pain. The lost teeth were eventually replaced with implants, and Craig returned to set ready to throw himself into more dangerous sequences. His commitment became legendary, establishing him as an actor willing to suffer genuinely for his craft. Number 16. The poker scenes used real professional players. Casino Royale's Central Poker Tournament required the film to depict high stakes, Texas Hold'em convincingly, showing characters making strategic decisions, and reading opponents with the expertise of world-class players. Faking this kind of authenticity is nearly impossible. Audiences who actually play poker can immediately tell when actors are just pretending to understand the game, when they handle chips awkwardly or make plays that no real player would consider. The production needed genuine expertise both in front of and behind the cameras. They hired real professional poker players to serve as advisors and background extras, bringing legitimate tournament players into the casino scenes to create an authentic atmosphere. These weren't actors pretending to play poker. They were actual champions and high-stakes regulars who knew the game intimately and could perform naturally because they were essentially just playing poker on a film set instead of in a real casino. More importantly, these professionals taught Daniel Craig how to actually play tournament-level poker. Craig spent weeks working with champions, learning not just basic rules but advanced strategy, reading tells, chip management, and the psychological warfare of high-stakes play. By the time filming began, Craig could hold his own in real poker games, understanding the decisions his character was making well enough to perform them convincingly. The investment in real expertise paid off completely. The poker scenes in Casino Royale are among the most authentic ever filmed, with knowledgeable viewers praising the accurate strategy and realistic tournament dynamics. Craig's comfort with cards and chips is obvious, and the background players create a genuine casino atmosphere because they're actual poker professionals doing what they do naturally. Number 15. Mads Mikkelsen's bleeding eye was his idea.
Five and seven of spades. A straight flush. 4 to the 8.
Le Chiffre, Casino Royale's primary villain, needed a distinctive physical characteristic that would make him memorable and unsettling without becoming cartoonish or ridiculous. The script described him as a financial genius and terrorist banker, but didn't specify any particular physical quirk or deformity. Mads Mikkelsen, cast as Le Chiffre, recognized that the character needed something visually distinctive to compete with Bond's physical presence and the film's action spectacle. During his audition, Mikkelsen demonstrated an idea he had developed. He showed how Le Chiffre could have a damaged tear duct that would cause one eye to occasionally weep blood, a disturbing tic that would signal stress or emotional disturbance. The effect was subtle, but genuinely unsettling, suggesting something fundamentally wrong with the character beyond simple villainy. Mikkelsen performed the bleeding eye during his reading, and everyone in the room had an immediate visceral reaction. Director Martin Campbell loved the idea instantly. It gave Le Chiffre a memorable visual signature, without requiring elaborate makeup or prosthetics, just occasional blood tears that would appear during moments of tension. The simplicity made it more effective, a small detail that audiences would notice and remember, without it overwhelming the character or performance. The bleeding eye wasn't achieved through special effects. Makeup artists would apply small amounts of stage blood to Mikkelsen's tear duct before takes, allowing it to naturally streak down his face during emotional scenes. The practical approach made the effect feel real and spontaneous, another detail in Casino Royale's commitment to physical authenticity over digital trickery. Number 14. The Aston Martin flip set, a Guinness World Record. Casino Royale featured one of the most spectacular car stunts in film history when Bond's Aston Martin DBS flips multiple times after swerving to avoid Vesper tied up on the road. The stunt wasn't just visually impressive, it set an official Guinness World Record for the most cannon rolls performed in a car, with the Aston Martin completing 7 full rotations in a single take. Achieving this record required innovative engineering and precise execution that pushed the boundaries of automotive stunt work. The production couldn't rely on traditional ramp methods to achieve 7 rolls. Instead, special effects supervisor Chris Corbould designed a hidden nitrogen cannon that would be mounted underneath the car. At the precise moment when the Aston Martin needed to flip, the cannon would fire, launching one side of the vehicle into the air and initiating the rolling sequence. The technique was experimental and dangerous, with significant risk of the stunt going wrong and destroying expensive equipment or injuring the stunt driver. British stunt driver Adam Curley piloted the Aston Martin during the record-breaking flip, trusting his life to calculations and engineering that had never been tested at this scale. When the cannon fired, the car lifted perfectly and began rolling, completing 7 full rotations before finally coming to rest. The single take captured everything needed, and Curley emerged shaken but uninjured from the wreckage. The spectacular crash became one of Casino Royale's most memorable moments, a practical stunt that looked more impressive than any CGI could have created. Number 13. Jeffrey Wright was cast. While method acting, another role.
Funny game, right? Sorry, I should have introduced myself, seeing as we're related. Excuse me. You're not buying in?
Jeffrey Wright arrived at his Casino Royale audition for the role of Felix Leiter. While deeply immersed in method acting for a completely different film he was shooting simultaneously. He had been playing a character with a specific accent, mannerisms, and psychological profile for weeks, living as that person both on and off set to maintain consistency. When his agent secured the Bond audition, Wright made a bold choice. He wouldn't break character from his other role, even to audition for a major franchise film. Wright walked into the Casino Royale casting session still fully inhabiting his other character, speaking in a different accent and carrying himself with body language that had nothing to do with Felix Leiter as written. Most casting directors would have dismissed this as unprofessional or bizarre, but the Casino Royale team was intrigued by Wright's commitment and the confidence it demonstrated. They asked him to read scenes while maintaining his method. Character, curious to see how he would handle the material. Wright delivered his audition entirely in character from his other film, never once dropping the accent or adjusting his approach to suit what Felix Leiter traditionally represented. The performance was unconventional and didn't match any previous interpretation of the character, but it demonstrated range, commitment, and an actor completely unafraid of making bold choices. The producers offered Wright the role, impressed by his dedication and recognizing that an actor who would maintain method work even during auditions would bring similar intensity to Bond's CIA ally. Wright's Felix Leiter became a highlight of Craig's Bond films. Number 12. The torture scene made test audiences walk out. The interrogation sequence where Le Chiffre tortures Bond became Casino Royale's most controversial scene, a brutal extended sequence of physical suffering that pushed far beyond what Bond films typically depicted. Le Chiffre strips Bond naked, ties him to a bottomless chair, and repeatedly strikes his genitals with a knotted rope while demanding information. The scene is unflinching, showing Bond's agony without cutting away or softening the violence through quick edits, or implied rather than shown brutality. When Casino Royale screened for test audiences, multiple viewers walked out during the torture sequence, unable to watch the extended graphic suffering. Others stayed but registered strong negative reactions in post-screening surveys, calling the scene excessively violent, disturbing, and inappropriate for a Bond film. The feedback created serious concern at the studio, with executives arguing that the sequence needed to be shortened or removed entirely to avoid alienating mainstream audiences. Director Martin Campbell and producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson fought to keep the scene essentially intact. They argued that the torture was essential to Casino Royale's reinvention of Bond, demonstrating real vulnerability and consequences that previous films had avoided. Bond needed to suffer genuinely, to be broken down physically and emotionally, to make his resilience meaningful rather than cartoonish invincibility. The studio reluctantly agreed to minimal trims, but wanted significant cuts. Campbell refused, willing to risk the film's commercial prospects to preserve the scene's impact. The torture sequence remained brutal, becoming one of Casino Royale's most discussed and debated elements. Number 11. Judi Dench demanded M have more screen time.
And why? So you could kill a nobody. We wanted to question him, not to kill him. For God's sake, you're supposed to just...
Judi Dench had played M in the previous 4 Bond films, establishing the character as a tough, no-nonsense intelligence chief who treated Bond with appropriate skepticism and authority. But those appearances had been relatively brief, with M appearing in a few scenes to assign missions and deliver exposition before disappearing from the story. When Dench learned that Casino Royale's script gave M a similarly limited role, she told producers she wasn't interested in simply repeating the same minimal function she had performed in earlier films. Dench made her position clear: either expand M's role significantly, making her integral to the story rather than just functional, or she would leave the franchise entirely. It wasn't a negotiating tactic or diva behavior. Dench genuinely didn't want to waste time on a part that offered no creative challenge or character development. She was willing to walk away from a lucrative franchise role if it meant avoiding repetitive, unchallenging work. Producers faced a difficult choice. Dench's M had become popular with audiences and provided continuity between the old Bond era and the reboot. Losing her would eliminate that bridge and require recasting a character viewers already liked. But meeting her demands meant significant script revisions and giving M storylines that would take time away from Bond and the central plot. They chose to rewrite. M's role was expanded substantially, giving her scenes that explored her relationship with Bond, her management of MI6's bureaucratic challenges, and her personal investment in Bond's success or failure. Dench's ultimatum improved Casino Royale by forcing writers to develop a more complex dynamic between Bond and his superior. Number 10. Craig trained. 6 months before filming. Began.
I think, Ava's doing such a magnificent job.
Of course, it's an action scene to start with, and he's extremely good at action. He looks very impressive, he moves impressively, and he handles himself extremely well.
Daniel Craig approached Casino Royale with the understanding that his Bond needed to be believably physical, a blunt instrument who achieved objectives through force and endurance as much as charm or gadgets. To embody that vision convincingly, he committed to 6 months of intensive training before filming began, working with military fitness instructors and stunt coordinators to transform his body into a weapon. The regimen was brutal, designed not just to build muscle, but to create functional strength and the cardiovascular endurance required for extended action sequences. Craig trained twice daily, 6 days per week, combining weightlifting, cardiovascular work, martial arts, and stunt choreography. Morning sessions focused on strength building, developing the muscular physique that would make Bond's physical dominance believable. Evening sessions emphasized fight choreography, parkour basics, and stamina training that would allow him to perform action sequences without obviously tiring. The schedule was exhausting and left little time for anything beyond training, eating, and sleeping. By the time cameras were ready to roll, Craig had transformed physically to a degree that created unexpected problems. The costumes that had been tailored for him months earlier, based on his normal body measurements, no longer fit. His shoulders, chest, and arms had developed so much that suits needed complete alterations. The wardrobe department had to remake multiple outfits, adjusting for his new proportions while maintaining the tailored look essential to Bond's style. Craig's physical transformation wasn't just cosmetic. The training made him capable of actually performing the demanding stunt work Casino Royale required, turning his body into a genuine tool for the role. Number 9. The Montenegro Casino doesn't exist.
Fold.
Casino Royale's high-stakes poker tournament takes place at the Casino Royale in Montenegro, a luxurious establishment that serves as the film's central location for much of its runtime. The casino appears opulent and sophisticated, exactly the kind of exclusive venue where international criminals and secret agents would gather for million-dollar card games. But viewers who tried to visit the Casino Royale in Montenegro after watching the film discovered an inconvenient truth. It doesn't exist. Montenegro has casinos, but none remotely resembled the spectacular location depicted in the movie. The production scouted actual Montenegro casinos during pre-production and found them inadequate for the film's needs. They weren't large enough, luxurious enough, or visually interesting enough to serve as Bond's gambling venue. Rather than compromising the film's aesthetic, producers made the decision to film all casino interior scenes in the Czech Republic, using the Grand Hotel Pup in Karlovy Vary as the primary location. The Czech location provided the old-world European elegance and spacious grandeur the script required. Production designers transformed the space into the fictional Casino Royale, adding details and decorations that created the specific atmosphere needed while preserving the building's inherent beauty. Montenegro provided some exterior establishing shots, but every moment inside the casino was actually filmed hundreds of miles away in a completely different country. Number 8. Vesper's dress was sewn onto Eva Green. The climactic sequence where Vesper drowns in a flooding elevator required Eva Green to perform underwater in a full evening gown, creating one of the film's most visually striking and emotionally devastating moments. To achieve the specific look of the dress underwater and ensure it moved correctly with the currents and Green's struggling movements, costume designers made a dangerous decision. They would literally sew the gown directly onto Green's body, creating a second skin effect that would photograph beautifully but trap her completely inside the garment. The sewn dress looked perfect on camera, the fabric clinging and flowing exactly as intended. But when the elevator set began filling with water for the drowning sequence, the gown became a genuine hazard. The heavy fabric absorbed water rapidly, adding massive weight that pulled Green downward. The tight construction prevented her from removing it quickly, and as water filled the confined space, she found herself genuinely struggling against a costume that had become a trap. Safety divers were positioned nearby, and Green wore breathing apparatus that could be accessed quickly if needed, but the scene required her to actually struggle and show genuine distress, which meant fighting against the waterlogged dress for real. Green later described the experience as genuinely frightening, moments where the performance stopped being acting and became actual survival as the sewn gown trapped her underwater. Number 7. The airport scene used a real prototype plane. The Miami airport sequence features Bond preventing terrorists from destroying the Skyfleet prototype, a massive aircraft worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The production needed to show this valuable plane realistically, creating tension around its potential destruction. Rather than building a detailed model or relying entirely on CGI, the filmmakers took a risky and expensive approach. They used an actual prototype aircraft, a real experimental jet valued at over $200 million. The aircraft manufacturer agreed to allow filming with their genuine prototype under extremely strict conditions and supervision. Insurance costs for the sequence exceeded the entire budget for some of the film's other action scenes, requiring specialized coverage that protected against any possible damage to the experimental plane. The production had to guarantee the aircraft's safety while still creating exciting action sequences around it. The decision to use the real prototype added authentic weight to the airport sequence. The aircraft looked completely genuine because it was genuine, a functioning experimental jet rather than a Hollywood recreation. But filming with such valuable equipment created constant stress, with insurance representatives and aircraft technicians monitoring every shot to ensure the prototype remained undamaged. The authentic aircraft elevated the scene beyond typical action movie spectacle, grounding the sequence in reality and creating genuine stakes. When Bond prevented the destruction, audiences were watching him save an actual $200 million prototype, not a fake movie prop.
Treasury has agreed to stake you in the game.
Vesper. See, by the way you ignored the quip about your parents, I'm gonna have to get with you.
Number 6. Craig and Green's chemistry. Was Instant Daniel? Craig and Eva Green met the day before their scheduled chemistry read for Casino Royale, barely knowing each other before being asked to perform romantic scenes together for producers and director. Many actor pairings struggle to find chemistry even after weeks of rehearsal, making chemistry reads nerve-wracking auditions where everything can fall apart despite strong individual performances. But when Craig and Green met, Something clicked immediately and effortlessly. They spent hours talking before the official read, discussing their characters, the script, and their approaches to the material. The conversation flowed naturally, and they discovered an easy rapport that translated directly to their performances. When they performed, the chemistry read the next day, their connection was so obvious and natural that producers knew immediately they had found their bond in Vesper. During filming, Craig and Green's relationship required minimal direction. Their romantic scenes worked because the actors genuinely liked and trusted each other, creating intimacy that felt real rather than performed. The shower scene, the train conversations, the tender moments between action sequences all benefited from chemistry that didn't need to be manufactured or coaxed from reluctant performers. The instant connection between Craig and Green became one of Casino Royale's greatest strengths, creating the most emotionally resonant Bond romance in the franchise's history. Their relationship grounded the film's emotional core, making Vesper's betrayal and death genuinely devastating rather than just plot mechanics. Number 5. Le Chiffre's torture device was medically consulted. The torture sequence required depicting Bond's suffering with enough realism to be disturbing, without becoming gratuitously graphic or medically nonsensical. Director Martin Campbell and the special effects team wanted the scene to be anatomically accurate, showing torture that would actually cause the kind of damage Le Chiffre intended, without relying on impossible movie physics or exaggerated reactions. They hired medical consultants, specifically doctors with knowledge of trauma and human anatomy, to advise on exactly how the knotted rope torture would affect Bond's body. The consultants provided detailed information about the specific injuries that would result from repeated blunt force trauma to the genitals and pelvic area. They explained what kind of pain Bond would experience, how his body would react involuntarily to the impacts, what visible signs of trauma would appear, and how long someone could endure this specific torture before losing consciousness or suffering permanent damage. This medical accuracy made the scene more disturbing, because informed viewers recognized that the torture depicted could actually work as shown. The consultants helped choreograph Bond's reactions, ensuring his physical responses matched what would actually happen, rather than generic movie torture scenes. The attention to anatomical detail transformed the sequence from typical action movie violence into something genuinely unsettling. The medical consultation demonstrated Casino Royale's commitment to grounded realism, even in its most extreme moments. The filmmakers wanted audiences to believe Bond was in genuine danger, suffering real consequences rather than shrugging off violence through typical action hero invincibility. Number 4. The film's budget exceeded all previous Bond movies. Casino Royale was produced with a budget of approximately $150 million, making it the most expensive James Bond film ever made when adjusted for inflation. The previous Bond films had been produced relatively economically, relying on practical locations, moderate action sequences, and controlled spending that kept costs manageable even as the franchise grew. But Casino Royale's ambitions required unprecedented financial commitment, with producers Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson arguing that rebooting Bond demanded resources that would signal serious creative reinvention, rather than just another routine sequel. The massive budget reflected several expensive choices: the extensive location shooting across multiple countries, the practical stunt work that required elaborate safety measures and specialized equipment, the decision to build full-scale sets rather than relying on CGI, and the hiring of top-tier talent both in front of and behind the camera all contributed to escalating costs. The parkour sequence alone required weeks of preparation and filming. The Venice building collapse was achieved through practical effects that destroyed an actual constructed set. The poker scenes demanded luxurious casino environments that looked genuinely expensive. MGM and Sony, co-financing the production, were nervous about the unprecedented spending. They worried that the budget had grown beyond what a Bond film could reasonably earn back, especially with an unproven new Bond and a darker tone that might alienate casual fans. But the producers insisted the investment was necessary to compete with modern action franchises and establish Craig's Bond as a legitimate rival to Bourne and other contemporary spy heroes. Number 3. Producers considered making Bond American.
Bond's been poisoned. He's going into cardiac arrest.
Stay calm and don't
During the casting crisis, when finding the right actor to replace Pierce Brosnan proved extraordinarily difficult, producers faced mounting pressure from studio executives to consider radical alternatives. One suggestion that briefly gained traction in executive discussions was casting an American actor to play James Bond, having him perform with a British accent to maintain the character's nationality while opening casting to a much larger talent pool. The idea was floated seriously during meetings, with executives arguing that audiences cared more about the character than the actor's actual nationality. When word of this possibility reached MI6, consultants who had been working with the production to ensure realistic intelligence agency depictions, the response was immediate and fierce. The consultants, actual British intelligence professionals who had been providing authenticity guidance, threatened to withdraw all cooperation if Bond was played by an American. They argued that making Britain's most famous fictional spy anything other than genuinely British would be a betrayal of the character's essence and an insult to British intelligence services. The threat carried weight because MI6 cooperation provided Casino Royale with credibility and access that would be difficult to replicate. Producers quickly backed away from the American Bond idea, reassuring consultants that casting would remain focused on British and Commonwealth actors. The brief flirtation with an American Bond remained mostly secret until years later, when people involved in production discussed the casting challenges publicly. The incident demonstrated how seriously British institutions took James Bond's national identity, considering him a cultural property that shouldn't be compromised, even for commercial considerations. Number 2. The opening song was rejected 3 times. Chris Cornell, the legendary Soundgarden and Audioslave frontman, was commissioned to write and perform Casino Royale's theme song, You Know My Name. Cornell approached the assignment with serious creative ambition, wanting to create something that matched the film's darker tone while still feeling like a Bond theme. He submitted his first version to producers, confident he had captured the right balance. They rejected it, saying it didn't feel enough like a traditional Bond song and needed to be more cinematic and dramatic. Cornell went back and reworked the song completely, adjusting the arrangement, changing lyrics, and adding orchestral elements that he thought would satisfy producers' concerns about it feeling appropriately Bond-like. He submitted the second version. It was rejected again, with producers saying it had gone too far in the orchestral direction and lost the rock edge that had made Cornell appealing in the first place. Frustrated but determined, Cornell created a third completely different version, trying to find the impossible balance between rock authenticity and cinematic grandeur that producers seemed to want. The third version was also rejected. At this point, Cornell had spent months working on the song, created 3 entirely different arrangements, and was being told none of them were right. He threatened to walk away entirely, telling producers they could find someone else if nothing he created satisfied them. The ultimatum finally broke the deadlock. Producers returned to Cornell's second version, made minor adjustments, and accepted it. You Know My Name became one of the most acclaimed Bond themes, but only after nearly falling apart completely. Number 1. Craig broke down, crying, after seeing the final cut. Daniel Craig had poured everything into Casino Royale, suffering physical injuries, enduring brutal training, and carrying the psychological weight of reinventing one of cinema's most iconic characters while facing intense public scrutiny and criticism. When production wrapped, he was exhausted physically and emotionally, uncertain whether his performance had worked or if he had failed to capture what the role required. He waited months during post-production, anxious about how the finished film would look and whether audiences would accept his radically different interpretation of Bond. When the time came for Craig to watch the final cut in a private screening, he sat with producers and director Martin Campbell in a small theater. The film played, and Craig watched his performance objectively for the first time, seeing how everything had been assembled and edited. As the film progressed and he saw what had been created, the emotional toll of the entire experience hit him suddenly and overwhelmingly. During the screening, Craig broke down crying, the accumulated stress and vulnerability of playing Bond finally releasing. He left the theater without warning and didn't return for 20 minutes, needing time alone to process the emotions flooding through him. When he came back, he was composed but visibly shaken, telling people he hadn't expected the film to affect him so powerfully. The breakdown wasn't about the film's quality, though Craig was relieved it worked. It was about the realization of how much of himself he had given to the role, and how exposed and vulnerable the performance had left him.